Welcome to the first episode of our new live series for the future of marketing. We'll be doing one of these live events a month from now until December on a variety of topics, some sector-focused episodes, some focused on skills development, all of them designed with the intention of helping you to be the best marketer you can be. Our guests across the series will have a range of experience, from current students to those in their first graduate role and people who've been doing the job for 2, 5, 10 years and even more. What we hope will provide you with is a series that helps you navigate the options available and choose the right graduate role or internship based on your personal skills, experience and ambitions. It's a series by marketing people for marketing people that will hopefully make the move from full-time education to the world of work less daunting. We're kicking off tonight by asking how you can stand out from the crowd when trying to secure your first graduate role. The chat will be open throughout the event, so if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please let us know and we'll get you involved in the conversation. Let's go inside and meet our guests. And Jamie Gordon. So Joanne comes to us. She's a lecturer in the Communications, Advertising and Marketing degree at Ulster University. And previous to that worked for probably longer than she'd like us to remind you in food and drink, publishing and engineering companies, I think.
And alcohol.
And alcohol, obviously. And Jamie is a recent graduate of Ulster University. Graduated last year from Jordanstown with a degree in marketing. And has just taken just a year. You've been in Datactics now, isn't it? Yeah, as a marketing executive. So it's great to see at the minute. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but on LinkedIn this week, I suppose all I've seen this week are people posting screenshots of the very good results that they've been getting when they've been as they've just graduated. So as they move now, it seemed appropriate now at this stage as they move out of full-time education into the world of work, that we should have a chat about how they can make themselves stand out. So Joanne, I mean, if we can start with you, Joanne, what do you think students should be doing while they're studying to bridge that experience gap?
Well, you've actually already said one of the major things that they can be doing, which is creating their LinkedIn profile to begin with. So, I mean, when you start university, so year one, that's when you want to start thinking about creating that profile so that you can add to it and build on it as you progress through university, because you know your learning experience right through your degree course is significant, and you grow as a person. You have different skills, different employability skills, and it's just adding to that profile. As you continue through university. So by the end of 4 years, you can reflect on that and go, wow, you know, this is significant, and it's something that is going to be, part of your armory going into your job or seeking job opportunities. And most students, really have part-time jobs. A lot of them, are building up employability skills. They're not even really aware of it. So, the fact that they're making it to work on time, so their time management there, and they're building up a work ethic actually that is going to stand to them. And even those students who don't have part-time work are usually involved in team sports, or they're involved in the community, or they're involved in different projects where, again, it's just about tapping into those skills that and capabilities that they've developed over time that they want to sort of realise and bring to the forefront.
Do you find that, I mean, I don't know, I find it in quite a lot of conversations with whether it be interns that have worked with us or other recent graduates, that they often underestimate the value of that experience.
Absolutely.
And they think because they haven't had a full-time paid marketing job or any job, for example, maybe, that they think there's no value in any of the experience. So it just requires you to think a little bit more about the experience you've had, whether that be even I remember when we were recruiting, even things like, had you any experience playing a musical instrument? Because things like that to me says, you've got discipline, you're able to focus on a task and and get it completed. You've got self-management skills, all of that. So do you find it's not necessarily about the actual maybe paid work experience you have, but finding the other life experience, if you like, and relating it properly?
And there's so much more going on in communities now that students, and sort of teenagers and young adults can get involved in. There's so much more opportunity there now that exists for people. So, when I had part-time work going through university, it was all about the pay packet at the end of the day. But, you were building skills there that you will find when you're in an interview situation that, you can tap into some of those skills that you've developed, like teamwork, collaborative efforts on projects. I mean, even if you're, again, like team sport in itself is, it's a supportive environment. It's, somewhere where people can really flourish as well, unbeknownst to themselves. And I guess it's just, having those, realise and understand that those skills are transferable into the workplace, and that's what's important. And so whether you have a part-time job, if you don't have a part-time job's great because it'll be there and you'll be able to see it, I suppose, a little bit quicker. But if you don't be deterred by that. Think about the other things that you've done, even if it's childminding. I mean, so somebody drops their children off with you and says, look after these minors for a while. There's a lot of skill in that, and so don't be afraid to bring that to the forefront. And if you are not involved in anything, well, then you just need to get really creative with your writing and your CV. But I mean, so there's that aspect of it too. But also building that LinkedIn profile is so important, because if you are applying for a job and sitting in front of a potential company that wants to employ you, when you walk out that door, they're probably going to look you up. What would you rather they looked you up on, Facebook or LinkedIn? So, Facebook's going to have your 18-year-old, birthday party snaps with you with a potential traffic cone on your head. Your LinkedIn profile is going to be what you want to direct them to, what you want them to read about you and know about you and understand about the person that they are going to employ. So if you don't have that, the only other place they've got to go is social media. So that's important. But also having that profile on LinkedIn allows you to network with peers and get, build those connections that they're just going to add to your experience as well. Creating job alerts, is it's all the functions that are there to be used on LinkedIn. So I would encourage first years to start building their profiles, not just your graduates.
I mean, in terms of your experience, Jimmy, you did more internships than anybody else, I think, in the history of humanity, I think, when you were at college. So was that a decision you made very deliberately at the start, that was the way you were going to try and bridge that gap when you graduated, to make sure that you had that experience in the bank?
Yeah, I was very aware that, you would have two sides of the coin. You've got agency, you've got in-house. So for me, I was able to get like a good period of time in both. Which meant that when it came to graduation, that I had experience both in-house and agency. And obviously within that, you pick up different skills. In-house, you're working very much towards a certain industry. In agency, you have experience across different accounts. So it was a great way to bridge that gap and give me an insight into both sides of the coin.
And that, I mean, you touched on it a little bit there. So it was a conscious decision on your part then to make sure you'd done experience both client side and agency side, to make sure you understood just what kind of role it was that you would like to do best whenever it came to graduation time.
Absolutely. And also the fact that, organisations are often very flexible, and I was able then to carry on working on my second internship on into final year. So I was able to get like a really good grasp of both. And, I started placement as soon as the second year ended. I think it was 2 weeks later. So I really maximised that time. It was more than a year. It was more like a year and a half, really, when I think of that period. So I was lucky in that way.
Yes, I mean, that's when we first came across each other. I think you came to one of the first future marketing events.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were a prolific networker even at that stage. So, I mean, when you were allowed to go to in-person events, obviously they've been a bit of a rarity for the last year and a half. But look, from the experience you had then during that internship year of client side and agency side, what did you find were the main differences between those two types of organisation or types of role?
So I would always say with industry, you have to go in and you're working towards KPIs. You're working towards every industry is very different. So I think that when I was in-house, I was able to really see, you work and blend your skills accordingly. And then when you're in agency, you're working across lots of different accounts. So it was completely different in that way. And I think that was the benefit of it. And you were able to then apply those skills and, not every skill in marketing you use all the time, especially with social media, you're not on every platform. And when you're in-house, you're really able to see that, being able to be intentional about where you are and where you're at and where your audience. Then in agency, you're working across lots of different accounts. So you've got a really broad remit of the different, and you're using a lot of different skills. And then in-house, you really learn to be more specific. So it was great to have the balance of both, I'd say.
And what did you prefer? I mean, you've been client-side for a year now, I suppose. Is that an example of what the experience taught you about what you felt was right for you to do?
Well, what I've really enjoyed about in-house is you get to go into an industry, you learn that industry, and then you could become really passionate about that industry, that product, that solution, and you're all working towards the same goal within that. And I really enjoy that about working in-house and having that experience of just really working towards that common goal. So I've really enjoyed my year so far, and I'm really excited to continue with that in the tech sphere.
Okay. I suppose, Joanne, going back to the job application process, so I mean, we've all been through. I was talking to Natasha, who works with us on the marketing side earlier, about, I used to keep my rejection letters. I don't know why. It was some sort of sadomasochistic thing, I think. And the last count, I think, before I caught myself on, I had about 85 or 90 of them. So once you've been through that whole process of the thanks but no thanks, if you even hear back, and you get the interview stage, what do you want to see from people when you get them to that stage and when you've got them over the table from you in an interview situation?
So usually when the big chunk of applicants come in, you kind of sieve through those, and you're looking, you're looking for those candidates who meet the criteria first of all for the job role. And so that's important. So once those potential employees walk through the door, you would like them to have a smile at least and to be happy to be there. I mean, nerves are so, no one is out to trip anyone up in that type of environment. So nerves are good, and I would say embrace them. Embrace the nerves, because you need a certain sort of level of nerves to kind of keep the adrenaline pumping. Leave your cliches at home, so don't bring those into the interview room with you. So, and try not to talk in lists of things like, I'm flexible, I'm agile, because those don't really mean anything as, adjectives in themselves. But talking about a time where you were, had to become agile and to apply those skills to certain situations. So describing a time when this happened and you had to think differently about something or be more flexible. So applying the actual, within context to these words, because a lot of people, I'm a team player and I'm flexible and I'm agile and all these things, doesn't mean anything. And it's, you want to list all of these really exciting words, but they don't mean anything in isolation. I would also encourage graduates to bring their dissertations with them, to bring any, essays that they've got distinctions in with them, because what that shows is, let's take dissertation for an example. So I've supervised quite a few dissertation students, and they've set out to research a topic that they're interested in, and you could potentially be sitting in front of, an interviewer in relation to a job that's relative to that. They have spent, months researching this topic. They've come up with a research rationale, and what they've done is set objectives. Now, setting objectives is a really important employability skill. You've done that in your dissertation. You've set out to achieve something. You've then conducted research, and chances are when you start off as a marketing executive or, those lower marketing roles, you're required to do surveys. You're required to find out, what consumers think about a product or to conduct research. So you can say, I've actually already done this. Here's my dissertation. So they've conducted research. They understand what qualitative and quantitative research methods are. And, so often they forget to bring that into the situation to show that they've done that. So what they've also done is they've presented findings, they've got results, and they've discussed and critically evaluated those results, and they've had a discussion about them. So, they have a document right there that they can reference immediately that is real life stuff, like interesting topics like influencer marketing or, you know, whatever it happens to be. And I would encourage students to not forget that they've done that. Sometimes it's like, oh God, thank God, my degree, that's that over. You know, I've got to talk about other stuff, but that's important to do. And also things like, you know, essays that I mentioned that are practical, or reports that they've written. So one of the assessments that we do in digital communication is a report on a case study, and they're required to really critically think about a case study and to write a report. If you find get a job, you're probably going to be asked to do month-end reports or write a report on this. So skills like being concise are important. So it's those types of things that you want to hear students talk about, or graduates rather talk about in that scenario.
Okay, and I mean, you touched on it there. There's very often you hear recent graduates going into the first role saying they're not quite sure how the theory that they learned as a large part of their marketing degree, their experience of then going into a job is very much straight into tactical activity. And marketing very often gets pigeonholed in the, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when there were only 4 Ps. I think there are
They're still really important.
more than that now. The four is about all I can cope with. So, but there is a tendency that it sort of gets stuck in the promotion box, and we sort of forget about the price, the place, and the product. So how important is it that whenever people are in that interview situation, or whenever people are going into their first job, that they demonstrate to the employer that they are aware of that there is a world that exists outside of social media, and there is more to the marketing job than Facebook posts and influencer marketing. We need to be more integrated, if you like, with departments across the organisation, coming up with product development ideas, being involved in pricing conversations, working out how we're going to get stuff to market is all an important part of the process.
I teach on the principles of marketing module in first year, and there's so much just basic information that you've talked about there that's just so important and so relevant. All of that theory and those concepts are relevant as well. As the student progresses throughout their degree, they're exposed to more marketing frameworks that are very, very applicable to industry. And what's important, in the profession of marketing is understanding those principles and having the ability to apply those to any industry. So you can move, like I did, from alcohol to food to media to engineering, because those principles, and concepts over time, haven't changed that much. Digital is really, really important. We all know that, but it is part, and it is a tool that assists and delivers across, so many aspects of marketing. It enables a lot of, other traditional marketing to take place. So it can't be viewed in isolation. And, I have interviewed candidates for roles where I've asked the question, to talk to me about digital marketing activities, and I get, Facebook answers that are just all about social media. And it's, there's a real misconception that that's all digital marketing is about. Also, and we might touch on it later, but just, when HR, when a department is thinking about what role they need, so often digital's tagged on the front when really it's a marketing manager they're looking for. It becomes a digital marketing manager, but it's actually really just a marketing manager. So digital gets sort of tagged on to quite a lot of jobs where it doesn't actually need to be. Digital's really important. I teach digital communications, but I also teach principles of marketing, and it's important to know that digital is bedded into the overall marketing strategy. So because we're all so engaged in social media, it does become very, skewed towards promotion, and that's understandable. But thinking about packaging, thinking about how products get to market, international marketing, global marketing, the legalities around export marketing, all of that's going to be important as well to bring into the conversation, so that you don't, in that 60 minutes opportunity you have to shine, you don't just talk about social media, because it's a part of the overall marketing mix, but it's not everything.
I mean, that leads us on, Joanne. I mean, so in that situation then, I mean, you've probably given us some examples already, but what can interns and graduates do either in that interview situation or when they're in the organisation to prove the value that they're adding beyond looking after the social media accounts?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to kind of, you know, to use as many examples as they can of experiences that they've had to bring some packaging with them. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a competitor product or even in that category, but just to say, you know, I just came across this and it actually made me think about your organisation, and, you know, I thought that this was, you know, a really suitable type of pack. You may consider this. There's a great quote by, I hope I remember the quote now verbatim, I probably won't, by Mark Ritson, that says, an interview is a really shitty place to start educating the organisation that you're trying to get a job with. Be very careful about your critical evaluation of their activities. So, you know, sometimes I've been in situations where the interviewer is sort of telling me all the things that we've done wrong, you know, whereas be careful with your language and, you know, bring examples, bring suggestions to the table like sponsorships and things that you think would be good for the company. There's a great one, actually, famous campaigns posted on LinkedIn there recently by Zoom, who are sponsoring the Grand Prix, which is brilliant, Zoom. So
I saw that one. It said, you know, some sponsorships were just made to exist. Yeah.
So when you're looking at things like, you know, following the likes of famous campaigns, it really just broadens your view, you know, outside of, you know, just looking at what's going on social media. So making sure to follow, you know, different authors within, or different, you know, professional bodies as well, like the Chartered Institute of Marketing, you know, becoming a member within that particular institution like you are, Jamie. That is such a valuable professional organisation to say that you're a member of. That's important. And prospective employees or employers will see that and recognise that, you know, you've shown a dedication to the profession, for want of a better word. So that's good. I mean, other areas that can shine is, you know, you can add a little bit of personal world into that scenario, because you've got achievements in your life that aren't necessarily always, you know, getting the top grades and coming first in your, you know, first class honours like yourself. So I remember being asked what one of my biggest achievements was, and it happened to be by a person who was a runner. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. And I had run 100 miles in the month of May for charity. And instantly the atmosphere changed in the room because you'd built, oh my God, you know, so the conversation changed and it became about that person recognising that takes a lot of commitment, actually, to want to do that run. That takes a lot of mental strength. So you can... Did
you know that was a good thing to say?
I didn't.
Or because that's what I was thinking.
I knew nothing about that.
Right, okay, so that was just a happy coincidence.
They just like, what's one of your biggest achievements? And I went, and I had just done it. So the interview, I ran 104 marathons in the month of May, but it was 105 miles for charity, for Parkinson's. And the interview was like a week later, and I was wrecked. So I went, well, actually, I've just run 105 miles. That's I see, and they were, actually, you know what, that is. And I had other achievements that I could have said, but that was significant to me at that moment in time. It doesn't always have to be about the, you know, the first class honours or the whatever marks that you've achieved. But there are other things you can bring to the party that are important. Sociability skills. And don't be thrown by that question that can come in. How did that make you feel when you were rejected for those 85 jobs? Oh my God, you've asked me something that requires me to think about my emotions. I am prepared for this. I want to tell you about my distinction, you know. How did that make you feel? You've got to be prepared for those types of questions as well, because resilience, you know, we're living in such a rapid changing environment, technology changes, you know, structural changes that are happening in organisations, remote working. How do those things make you feel? Really think about that, you know, because that can dial up the resilience and the other skills.
It's back to what you said earlier, Joanne, that it's not saying you're resilient and you're agile and you can adapt to change. It's having examples of when you've actually done that.
You've actually done it.
Okay. I mean, going back to you, Jamie, I mean, we've talked about your experience on the internships. did you find in the interviews that you went to after you graduated that did you feel that was a real advantage, that you had that sort of breadth of experience to call on, and specific examples that you could reference when asked certain questions?
Definitely. I felt like it was great to be able to say I've been involved with in-house and, agency, because I was able to give examples of, campaigns I'd worked on, as well as, when I worked for the media outlet, the tech media outlet, Sync and I was able to talk about, the pieces I had written, and especially in that role, there was a lot of collaboration with, the local NI tech scene, and that's where I find myself now in a scale up Datactics. So I was definitely able to use that, to the advantage there, because I'd had that experience working and interviewing those tech organizations. I'd had that experience across press releases and, building up press relations and stakeholder relations. So I was able then to bring that to the table with interviews and have like that tangible experience to say I have, a knowledge of the tech scene because I've worked within it and been dialed into the tech scene, attended lots of events in the tech scene, and been able to have that experience directly with those.
Did you find even the experience of maybe knowing the language that is used in that sector helped in the interview situation? Because I always say to people, Joanne's probably heard me saying this, any sales process is essentially a risk reduction exercise, and a recruitment process is exactly the same. And anything you can do in that environment to make you appear like the least risky option is going to improve your position. So understanding the language, understand the way they communicate, understanding the marketing tactics that sector uses.
And I think that was a big part. I've always worked for small organisations, and then now in Datactics is scale-up organisations. So I think having that experience of smaller organisations has always meant that I've had to learn that resourcefulness. That the budgets maybe haven't been big on some of the campaigns I've worked on, and I've had to, I've been in smaller teams. You really pull together. So there's the collaboration piece, but as well as that, understanding, what it takes to work in an organisation to help it to grow, and how networking is so important within the tech scene, and being able to see a business flourish and grow at smaller teams. I felt as well that I was able to get a lot of responsibility, and be able to have those experiences, particularly in first place writing press releases and being central to that. Invaluable experience then going into scale up and being able to carry that forward.
You mentioned it there. You threw yourself pretty aggressively into building your own network while you were studying. How do you feel that helped in terms of what you learned? And I'm thinking about the topic of this whole conversation, how it made you stand out from the crowd then when it came to the point of actually looking for that first graduate role?
I think, just going back to what you said, Joanne, LinkedIn building is so important, building up that portfolio, but, being proactive. I did seek out on placement to get involved with the Belfast marketing meetup and committees, and also getting involved with events and attending those events, and then building up that network. I would always say, don't be shy to ask people for a coffee, that are experienced within the industry, and be able to really learn from those people, because they've been there before, they've experienced that. So when you're trying to find your niche or your speciality within that really helps. And LinkedIn really helped me to be able to share, this is what I'm attending, link in with people. I realize on this platform you can connect with people that are in this positions I would like to be in, and I could very strongly see myself in. So I was really able to hone that, and LinkedIn then became something that everybody was doing. But I remember in my year at uni, we were the first kind of year that was really going for the LinkedIn personal brand, all that terms. I remember being on place when that was quite new, whereas now saying students that are in their final year, they're all over it. But when I was in final year, in second year, it wasn't a big thing at all. So to get in there quite early and to be able to video, I learned a lot about video marketing from yourself, and to be able to really build that network and build that following, but also have an opinion, get into campaigns and reshare them. And and sort of develop a bit of thought leadership, but from from a young perspective. You know, this is what I've learned from this, takeaways, blog. You know, I see so many graduates and young students now earlier, like they've got these Instagram pages. They're already thinking, I'm going to set up, you know, my thoughts. I'm going to set up this, like, their own bespoke kind of agency. If you think about it, some of them do that. But it's getting in there early, and you're remembered for that. And I think that's something that I was aware of, and it really helped me.
Did you find that I mean, a lot of the time, I suppose people might not ask for that help and advice because they're afraid of the answer being no. Did you find that there was a general willingness to help and support when you? I mean, I know we've been having sort of monthly coffees now for about 2 years.
Yeah,
I think. Did you find there was a general willingness from people who were just happy to help?
I did, and I think there's that imposter syndrome. You feel, oh, I'm young, I'm like at a really early stage in my career, but people want to share their expertise. They want to see, you know, you're the up and coming like generation. You're learning these skills. Everybody starts somewhere, and I think generally people feel like that. Like they understand that they did the same, and I think that's the response I received was, of course, yeah, I would love to share knowledge and even offer that bit of career advice when you're looking to start out, you know, post university, and about you know, maybe like CIM qualifications, you know, all of that sort of stuff. You get that advice, and that's what I really valued and I really received from people I reached out to. So it worked really well.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose, Joanne, if we go back to you and think about it from the perspective at the employer side now, I mean, we've done a few videos, and one of the ones we got the biggest reaction to was one we did with Gil David from Run DMG, the Facebook ads agency, and we talked to him about something that really wound him up, and his topic of choice was unicorn job descriptions, where you see, you know, graduate marketing exec or junior marketing exec roles that they're asking for people to look after PR, be a video expert, look after all the social media channels, run events, do internal comms, and they're going to pay you 18 grand for it. What can employers do to hire better and to be more specific, if you like, and make sure that they understand the skills that they're going to need to get the job done before they, and you mentioned people put digital in front of a job description, and I mean, I'm guilty of that whenever we were hiring marketing people, and whenever we've been running events as well, because the fact of the matter is, you put digital in front of something, you get more applications, you sell more tickets. So how can employers improve how they hire marketing people to make sure they get the right people that their organisation needs?
Well, think about how those people are categorising themselves as well. So, you know, quite often you see organisations describing the position as best in class or best of the best and world class. That's not how the average, you know, candidate thinks of themselves. And, you know, you're more likely to turn someone off by using that type of, you know, superlative language. I think you know, cultural fit is a big thing as well. So it's very important when you're writing a job description to give an overview of what, you know, the organisation is about. And I mean, that's not just you know what they sell and the products and the markets that they deliver to, but it's about, you know, brand purpose, authenticity, and trust has become such a, you know, kind of a big sort of topic in a big area at the moment. And you're finding that this generation, you know, Generation Z, that's now, you know, have emerged, are looking to align with organisations that they connect with and feel like they want to be part of. So, I mean, I guess it's recognising, you know, that there has been a shift in, you know, but from generation to generation in terms of you know, cultural fit as well. You know, values and ethics and culture are very important, you know, aspects to the role now. I think back to 25 years ago, writing job descriptions in a number of organisations. I was list of bullet points of here's all the things that you need to be able to do when you get in here, and that is just such a turn off. Like a list of responsibilities, semicolon, here they are, and you know, so often you're doing actually so much more than that. I mean, I think as well, you know, from an expectational point of view, when a graduate enters into an organisation, you know, there is only so much, I guess, the organisation can do as well to sort of, you know, get them inducted, get the training in place. What you find now is within 6 to 8 months, they want to know what their pathway to promotion is. And, you know, very quickly, how am I going to, you know, get sitting on the board here at 23? And, you know, some people actually, organisations have to think about some of those candidates actually could be fast tracking to roles like that very quickly. And it's recognising the potential in those candidates as well, that, you know, where they can add huge value to an organisation. But also just being realistic about what you're going to be doing. You know, don't be afraid to get the hands dirty when you get into an organisation as well. And as you say, Jamie, you've had fantastic experience with in-house and client, so you're getting a real broad view of stuff that you have to do. And it's the willingness and the openness to sort of just learn from the ground up as well. That's really important. But I think it's important that the organisational, you know, values are important within a job description. You know, where the company's going, what they've achieved, how well they're doing in the industry that they're in, you know, what sort of where their expectations in terms of market share, or how quickly they're growing, or if they've got investment from Invest NI, declaring all of that in their sort of job description or their ad, for want of a better word. It's really important, because you can make a decision whether you want to be part of that growth strategy or not, and whether it's for you. So also, you know, what can be a bit disconcerting for organisations is putting up roles like digital marketing manager, and then it becomes so much, or events manager, and then you find you're doing so much more than organising events. So it's just, I guess, not trying to pigeonhole the role too much. You know, other opportunities may exist for candidates within this role, you know, and just wanting to be part of that growth that the organisation's going for. But speaking about the culture, what the reward system is like as well, because rewards are, and recognition is a big part of, you know, how people feel valued in an organisation, and it's so often overlooked. A no boss of mine used to now jokingly say, job retention, Joanne, that's your your reward. We're going to let you come back in January. Thanks. So, you know, just having some sort of reward, and whether that's, you know, a duvet day, it doesn't have to be always monetary. It could be a half day shopping at Christmas. So, you know, something like that. So we've got to think about just how you reward your employees to keep them as well, because graduates can jump around as well, and, you know, think, oh, this is not for me, I'll try this other thing, and that doesn't always read well on a CV if you've jumped around a little bit too much, if you don't have the staying power, you know.
Well, I've worked in organisations before, and I know times change, and the way people approach the job market changes, but do you think it's important that graduates know that it can potentially work against them? You know, it's all very well saying, you know, I want to go out and I want to work a year in this place, and then a year in another, and a year in another, and I want to get a lot of different experience until I find out what I really want to do. I mean, I know we've both been involved in hiring marketing people for marketing teams, and a lot of the time that was a big red flag. Sometimes if someone had moved too much, because it was like, do they actually have any staying power here? Is there any stamina? Are they a wee bit too agile? Yeah. Do they leave when going gets a wee bit tough?
Bored, you know, because like it's not always fun and games and events and, you know, parties and you know, big promotions and campaigns and TV and all those things. You know, sometimes you just have to sit down and actually write the plan, which can be boring at times. So it's just, you know, whether they can kind of work with the boredom, and particularly, you know, if you're in an industry that's quite turbulent, like the hospitality industry right now, and how resilient you are within that organisation in terms of being deployed elsewhere within the organisation, saying, look, I know my job is drying up a little bit here. Would it be okay if I worked over in this other department while things stabilise? Just being adaptable in that way. But yeah, no, jumping around doesn't always but it doesn't always bode well. You can, and sometimes an interviewer can kind of look down very quickly and say in 6 months, 4 months, not sure, and it immediately kind of moves you off.
It's back to the earlier point about if the process is a risk reduction exercise, that looks risky.
That looks risky. That looks risky. Yeah.
And I mean, given, I suppose, we often see junior marketing jobs, or even the first marketing manager job in an organisation, gets very closely aligned with sales. The fact of the marketing job is you end up doing work across the organisation, whether it be internal comms from the HR side, whether it be, you know, preparing stuff for the MD's quarterly report to the team, whether it be HR and recruitment marketing. How do you feel new marketing people in an organisation should approach that to make sure that they're building those connections and relationships and understanding, because departments don't necessarily know what they need from them, and building those connections across and making sure the department knows that they're there to help them as well, and they're not just a sales tool, they're there to help across the organisation as much as they can.
And that sometimes, you know, is blurred for both the marketeer and the people in the organisation. You know, just as you'd said, almost like the marketing department's unapproachable, you know, by finance. But, you know, finance plays a really important role in the organisation, and they also need to be marketed in terms of what they do for the business, and how they come across to customers and all of that, and how they, you know, price your products. All of that's really important. So, I mean, there's no getting away from that cross communication in an organisation, but marketing touches every department. You know, from your product marketing, product communication, to the corporate message, to the branding, to, you know, your the identity, to how your staff are portrayed, to the language that's used. You touched on something earlier there that I wanted to mention as well. In an interview, when you're asked, you know, what do you know about the company, and they start to recite the About Us page, that can be so frustrating and quite boring to listen to. But if you tap into things like the annual report, or to other maybe white papers or articles that have been published by the organisation, you can pick up on phraseology, you can pick on keywords up, and you can start playing those back in an interview situation. So the organisation recognises that you recognise what they're about. But marketing is, you know, marketing and sales, there is no getting away from the fact that they are joined at the hip. They're there to support each other, and one can't really exist without the other. And they need to be, you know, supportive and aligned in terms of the direction that they're going. And so it's important that as you go into a marketing executive role, that you understand the role that sales plays, and ask if you can go out with the sales manager, ask if you can go out into trade, into the field, get some experience in sales, so that you can fully bed that understanding into your psyche, and take that with you. You know, as you've rightly mentioned, it touches right across the organisation as well, from brand and vehicles on the road. You know, some of the stuff that isn't particularly sexy, like the corporate headed paper, that all kind of sits with marketing. I'm sorry, but it does. But so does the lovely radio ads and social campaigns and all of that. So it's just, I guess, about being consistent across about what you can bring to the organisation. I mean, I always think there's no getting away from the fact that marketing is about having a consistent quality product in a market where there is a demand for that product, and having a competitive advantage in that market. I mean, just don't ever deviate from that, because that's kind of what will help you to survive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that certainly I've noticed over the length of time I've been involved in marketing jobs is how much more complex it's become. So back when I got my first marketing job, it was 1999, I think, you know, it was pretty simple, actually, when you looked forward, because there weren't that many different tools or channels available to you. It's got a lot more complex now, with largely as a result of a lot of the digital tools like SEO and PPC and all that coming in. So you've seen the birth of all these individual specialisms now.
In that environment, you know, you see, there used to be full service design agencies used to be the only agencies that there were, but now they're very specialist agencies. I mean, us at Blue Sky Video or one, we've decided that is try and own that distribution channel and do that inch wide, mile deep thing. In that environment and in that landscape now, do you think there is still a place and an opportunity for the generalists, or do you think specialists it would be important to try and identify a specialist and go after that earlier on in your career?
I would take the view that it's better to be a generalist because you probably are building more transferable skills, you know, across a business and sort of adding to your armory that way by having that generalist view. That's not to say that you don't need specialists. And any role that I have been in a senior marketing position, I've needed specialists to, you know, deliver the stuff that I can't do. And, you know, always surround yourself with the right people and the best people. If they're not in-house, you need to find them in an agency somewhere. And, you know, I have worked with some absolutely fantastic specialist agencies that have delivered, and that's really, really important. I'm personally a generalist. I specialise in marketing, and that would be my specialised. So I'm a specialised generalist. So it's where I have a specialised subject, but I have general business knowledge. Yeah. I would say, or you could be a generalised specialist where you've got, you know, general understanding about most things, but within a specialised industry, for example. So, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But I think with a generalist approach, you've got, you know, you're building skills that allow you to sort of approach different challenges in different ways. That there's, you know, different ways to look through, look into something with a generalist view. Specialists bring a great degree of comfort, confidence and security. If you're launching a huge campaign and you've got, you know, you've engaged with specialists to help you deliver that, you can sleep at night. If you haven't, you know, surrounded yourself with some of those people who have got those skills, that can be a little bit shaky ground. Yeah. You know, if you've invested a lot of money in a campaign and it's ready to go live, you need to have the confidence that it's going to be successful. So I think they work, you know, the whole SEO, PPC world is very specialist. Do I really have a great knowledge about technical SEO? No, I don't. Who do I ring? Barry Adams. So
see, everybody rings.
See, everybody rings. So, you know, you've built those networks as well, Jamie. You know how important it is to have those guys, you know, to be able to lift the phone to them that you've worked with in the past, who are now coming into the university and delivering in some of my seminars for me on that, you know, part like technical SEO. And Peter, you know, I don't know how to do video marketing. You do. So I know what's useful and I know I need to do it, but you can come in and talk to my students about how to actually do it. And that's important. So they live in a world together. They coexist.
What's your experience of that, Jamie Bean? Has your opinion changed at all, given a year's work experience of the kind of skills that you thought you needed versus the kind of skills that you now know you need after spending a year in your first graduate role?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, it depends on the organisation you work in. You know, for example, you know, in a scale-up, you kind of have to be able to, like, lend your hand wherever it's required. And I think having that grasp, and as you said, Joanne, like, you know, being able to work with sales, being able to liaise, like, there's so many aspects that you just have to be able to work across, and the business needs come first. The KPIs are the first and foremost priority. So you need to be able, my experience has always been, like, be able to be the one to put your hand up and say, yeah, I'll give that a go, and I'll learn, and I'm able to lend my hand to different things. But I do at the same time think that there is definitely, as you said, there is a space for speciality, and there's definitely, it depends in the industry that you're in. You know, if you're in an organisation where video is very, very pertinent, then video is an area that you can really leverage. And if your role in that organisation requires you to really grasp and understand video, brilliant. Like video can become your speciality, but if your role is much more needing to be adaptive and, you know, agile, to focus on lots of different areas. And in a scale up in a small company, you don't know, it changes every time company grows. And then, and as a result, byproduct of that, then you have to be able to go, okay, like we now need to do more things and try new things. So I've always been more on the generalist side, and so far anyway, and that's been my experience.
Okay, and I mean, now you have a year in your first graduate role. I mean, what are the biggest things you've learned about, leaving aside the knowledge of marketing theories and marketing practices, and I hate the term softer skills, but what are the things you've learned around what those softer skills that you need to succeed in an organisation?
I think there's that crisis management, resilience piece where it's like, you know, at uni, you know, especially like I loved my degree, you know, I just worked at it, like I just worked really, really hard and I really enjoyed it and I did really well at uni. But, you know, when you're working and, you know, crisis management, you have to be able to like go, okay, that campaign didn't land, that did land. And it's that really grasping that and understanding that and going, okay, well, okay, this didn't work, why? I think that was a massive learning curve for me in the first year, being able to deal with that. Like, okay, well, that didn't work, why? And processing that and, you know, working across with, you know, the different functions in a business, especially in house, like that's so different. You know, at uni I wasn't working or had any correspondence with HR or finance, or, you know, in the role I'm in now, I work with a lot of tech people, so software developers, and really understanding that and going, how can we help you? Like, how can we like express what you're doing? How can we bring the technology and the innovation to the consumer? So I feel you really just have to work on that to know it, and I definitely have found that you understanding, processing different languages, working with different personalities, and really bringing solutions and being able to think on your feet. Something I've really learned.
Okay, thanks very much.
One last thing I would say as well, actually, just when we were talking about that specialist at SEO and PPC, there's so many things like the Google Skills Shop and Facebook Blueprint as well, that in this interim period where you're applying for jobs and working on your LinkedIn profile, start to gather up some of those qualifications or accreditations. I am a big advocate of continually adding those qualifications to your education, to your list. So, you know, that's really important. It reads really well on your CV as well. And you're seeing lots of announcements on LinkedIn, like you've said, getting their degrees, but equally people saying, I've got Google Skills Shop certification now. That will set you apart from the other candidate if you have that.
Well, I noticed that was one of the things you did, Jamie. You I think it was the HubSpot ones, wasn't it? You did quite a lot of the HubSpot certifications, didn't you?
Worked my way through them, and you find that they're all so different, and there's so many resources as well. Like they've got SEMrush as well. Obviously, you've mentioned Google. LinkedIn, you've got Facebook Blueprint, and within LinkedIn there's the learning section. There's so many things you can tap into, and then a step beyond that, you know, is CIM. You've got like professional qualifications which add that extra dimension after you've done your academic, but definitely for students and stuff that are looking to branch into placement, get on those qualifications and really see, you know, areas that you want to upskill in, and they're very readily available.
The learning thing never stops, does it?
Never
stops.
Every few years, as I said, because the jobs, if I hadn't done anything since my first marketing job in 1999, I wouldn't have the first notion about how to do anything that I need to be doing today. So it goes back to that agility piece, I suppose. We don't know what the technology, what the channels, what the tools are going to be in 4 or 5 years' time. So more and more, I think, not just in marketing jobs, but in any jobs, we're recruiting for people who we think can adapt to change, and the change that we don't know what direction it's going. We just know it's going to change.
But how can you ask the questions and understand the answers if you haven't at least attempted to get the experience and understand it yourself? So I remember when I did the level 7 professional postgrad CIM qualification, thinking, I feel like everything I know about marketing is starting to get a little bit dated, and I need to go on this refresher course. It's not a refresher course, it took me a year and a half, but anyway, and I completed that. And then when I moved into Ulster, and I was going to be part of the CAM course, and I was going to be teaching digital communication, I thought, I need to, you know, I in my roles, I haven't never been the person who has done the social media campaigns. I've been the person who knew that I needed somebody to do that. So I needed to go and find out how you do that. So I did the level 6 CIM digital diploma as well, because how can I teach it if I don't know it? And I felt that was important, for me. And, I'm 27 and still, I'm still adding to my qualifications. Every time I've had a baby on my maternity leave, I've done a qualification. But they all add up. Mm-hmm. But it's the Google. Listen, I failed Google Skills Shop twice now. I still haven't been able to pass it. Keep getting one question wrong. But just, building your expertise in those areas, and you might hit on something like a specialist, particular role that you really love. Go after it.
So for all those people who are potentially watching this and thinking, they've just got their degree, that's the learning over, what we're saying is sorry.
Sorry it ain't.
Sorry it ain't. Every year or two, you need to be re-looking at this, and depending on the organisation you're in, depending on what stage of growth that organisation is at, you need to figure out what skills you need to have. One of the things I wanted to touch on, one of the biggest challenges for me, my marketing career was largely built in small businesses. The last business I was in grew to a size that by Northern Ireland standards would be considered large, but outside of here just gets over the sort of small business barrier. That there's the level of agility required in businesses like that when they're growing really fast is quite high, and because you do have to change.
You do have to change and adapt with that, and the forecasting never stops in an environment like that as well. And when as a marketeer and you've created this fabulous plan, and you have to go to finance and say, "Can you write the check?" You've got to.
It's a fun conversation.
That's to the bean counters. You've got to have really thought that plan through. But also go with some options. Say, well, look, if you give me this amount of money, we can deliver this as a business. If you increase it, I could fast track our growth to this. So really thinking about how you can do fast track growth, ordinary growth, or trickle along. And but I remember
what speed do you want to move?
What speed do you want to move at?
Yeah.
I remember a situation with when Magners was launched in 1999. I was part of the team then, and asking for more money to hit a target, and it was my first experience of actually getting the money, and my boss saying to me, "You better hit that target, Joanne." And that's when my sleepless nights started. I remember I used to wake up in the logo of Magners and my face, "Oh my God, I have to hit this target." And that opened my eyes up to working as a graduate. I was an intern in that organisation. Then I got a permanent role. So I was with them for 12 years. So your intern, your placement can be very important to actually securing you a full-time job in the company that you've done your placement if you make a good impression. And that started my actual career in, so there's targets, and then you've got to hit the targets, and then you've got to build the next plan, and then you've got to be thinking about that stuff. So it was great to hear Jamie be so passionate about the industry that he works in as well. If you don't have a love for what you're doing and a love for the industry that you're in, it's not going to work. If you're trying to really, get excited about, I was excited about health food, flaxseed, it looks like sawdust. I loved it. So, not a lot of people are going to have that passion. I did. My first job was alcohol. Who doesn't love alcohol? I got very passionate about that for 12 years. But Jamie is hearing the passion coming through about the tech industry that you have. I mean, that's so evident. And people will see that as well, and they'll see you as a passionate contributor to your industry, to the job that you're in. And that's really important. Having those conversations out loud is an important thing to do as well. Make yourself known, which you're doing, which is great.
What would you say, Jamie, I suppose, to wrap up, to those people who are celebrating their great results, and now the excitement, the anticipation and nerves of sort of embarking on that job hunting journey? What advice would you give them about how they can make sure they end up not just with a job, but the right job?
I think one piece of advice would be, firstly, look to upskill, to show that continual desire to learn. So maybe take some extra courses up. You know, you can look into CIM, professional body qualifications. But also, I would say you could also consider working with freelancers. You could maybe look at some bespoke agencies or some people that are working and, you know, it was in a particular niche, and see if you could get an internship with them.
Yeah.
Or also, you know, engaging with those people gives you the option to seek out with their network and be able to get that experience through that. And then I would say, don't be afraid of rejection. Don't be afraid of applying for jobs, because as you've both said, the passion will come through when you're applying for it. And sometimes one door closed means another door opens, and that's absolutely fine. And you will find the right role for you. And I just wouldn't be worried about the time scale and worrying about getting that right role now. Just keep your ear to the ground, keep focused, and keep upskilling going, and the right role will come to you, you know.
And stay in touch with your lecturers, and there's a lot
Yes.
of support in the university as well. You know, a lot of support with employability teams, and a lot of support with your lecturers. They're there to kind of keep you going too if you've made those connections on LinkedIn.
And ask for help.
And I'll absolutely ask for help.
Because there is something about, I mean, I'm older than you are, I'm older than 27, obviously. And, you know, there does come a point, and I don't know what happens to us as humans, but there does come a point where you suddenly decide the time has come to try and give something back a little bit, you know. And I find myself even doing the volunteering things with Young Enterprise NI and involvement in school PTAs. There's something about what happens to people at a certain point in their life that they just, I mean, your move to teaching is exactly that.
And lots of second years, you know, who are applying for placement roles are being asked to do these really chunky presentations, you know, discuss a paid, owned, earned marketing campaign for the launch of a L'Oreal brand, you know. Been asked really significant things, and they've reached out for help. You know, how would I structure this, Joanne? How would I? And I love to be able to say, look, you've got to start off like this and go to this area. Like, you know this stuff. So I think it's really important, as you've said, to make yourself available to help those people along, because I know in my career I've had some very supportive mentors. In my life, I've been very lucky to have 2 or 3. And I think any help you can give, you should.
That's great. It seems like a good point to wrap it up. Thanks very much to everybody who turned up this evening. This is obviously be available as a recording after the event. Just want to give a big thank you to everybody involved at the other side of the camera. So we have Natasha, who's been monitoring the stream, Ethan's been looking after the studio, and Reese has been looking after the sound, and Aidan's been monitoring the cameras for us. So next up, we've got an event scheduled for the 22nd of July. That's going to be the next in the live stream series, and we're looking at taking a look at a sectoral focus there with retail and e-commerce. It's a particularly relevant one, I suppose, given the experience of the last 12 to 18 months and the growth of many businesses and the acceleration of the move online for a lot of businesses. So our guests for that one we've got Kevin Traynor, who's the founder of the Ecom Live event, which takes place in Belfast on the 22nd and 23rd of September. With apparently, he tells me earlier today that I had to tell him that's got more than 50 speakers and 10 training events over 2 days. He also twisted my arm to say that they are recruiting at the minute for a trainee growth consultant. So if any graduates are interested in having a look at that job, they should take a look at the Ecom Live website. We've also got Corey Landrum, and Corey's PPC lead at a specialist Google Ads and SEO agency called Code Fixer. And they work with quite a lot of e-commerce campaigns. And then we've got a third speaker to be confirmed for that one. So that's Thursday, the 22nd of July at 7 o'clock, same time, same place. And Natasha will be in touch with everybody about the registration link for that. Final thing to say is thanks for joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll see you again at the next event. Thanks very much to Jamie and Joanne. And I don't know about anybody else, but I need a drink.